I stayed up late, way past my normal bedtime of 10 p.m., watching videos on YouTube. On the sidebar, there was a playlist ready to go. I watched a video featuring one of my favorite basketball players, Larry Big L Johnson, sporting a ponytail with his long blonde hair. He really looked like a movie star. I had known him back in college. He was a star player on the team and lived in the same building as me. We often bumped into each other, especially during the off-season. When he turned pro, he joined the Wizards, the team closest to my home in Virginia. He retired from the NBA 3 years ago and now works as a commentator for Wiz TV games. I was watching some of his old clips, reminiscing about the past. The next clip wasn't about basketball. It was a news clip showing Big L dancing intimately with a beautiful blonde woman at a club in Miami. The dance was very suggestive, and to my shock, the blonde woman turned out to be my wife, Lee. The clip had just been posted and the headline read, "Big L, Another Conquest." I watched the entire 3-minute clip, which ended with Big L and Lee sharing a kiss. I downloaded the clip immediately. I called Lee's phone, but she didn't pick up. The timestamp on the clip showed it was recorded just an hour ago and recently posted online. Lee was supposed to be in Miami for a business meeting, a 4-day conference with colleagues from her advertising firm, including my friend Bart Kovacs. I called Bart and he answered. "Hey Bart, it's Lee Martin," I said, using my nickname, Marty. There was a brief pause before Bart replied, "Marty, how's it going?" "Not good, Bart." "Do you know where Lee is right now?" I asked urgently. Heck! Bart hesitated. "So she's with Big L?" I pressed. "I need to know. The whole thing's on YouTube now, and my kids will see it tomorrow. I need to know if she's been with him, and for how long." They were supposed to return home tomorrow at lunchtime after being in Miami for 3 days. They got together on Tuesday when we arrived. While we were checking in, they recognized each other, probably from college. She attends the meetings during the day, but doesn't join us for meals. Her roommate says she hasn't been there any night. I assume she's with the guy. We all assumed that. "I'm really sorry, Marty." "Me too." "Will you see her in the morning?" "She's catching a plane. I might. She shows up for the morning meetings, just not breakfast." "Maybe she's still at the hotel, just in another room." "Okay. Tell her not to bother coming home. If she even planned to at all. He lives here too." "I don't want to confront her about it. If she asks, I'll tell her." "Fair enough. See ya." Lee and I met in college when we were both 20, in our junior year, taking an advanced math class. When I walked into the class on the first day, I saw the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, just sitting there, doodling on a pad. There were only 5 other students, all guys. She was sitting alone, though, so I sat down next to her. She glanced over at me. "Well, I see someone decided to take that seat. I was starting to wonder if I smelled funny." I looked at the other guys, all nerds, probably very shy. I wasn't a nerd, despite taking the advanced math class. I'm 5'8", 150 pounds, with brown eyes and hair, not too bad looking. Women seemed to like me, if not blown away. I used to be told I had personality. "I don't think you smell funny, although I'd have to be closer to really tell. They're all shy, nerdy types." "And you aren't a nerd?" "No, I can see that. I'm Lee Moore." She extended her hand, and we shook. "I'm Lee Martin. When we get married, you won't even have to change the monogram on your luggage and handkerchiefs." "How convenient." She smiled at me, and then the instructor walked in. After class, Lee and I walked together toward the Student Union building. She had green eyes, blonde hair, 5'7", with a medium figure, large breasts, and just a beautiful girl-next-door face. When she smiled at me, I was completely smitten. I told her, "I bet you were surprised when none of the guys in class sat next to you, because every guy would want to get next to you." "Thanks. I was surprised. Mostly, I have to discourage guys. You took advantage of my insecurity, and now I really can't discourage you. I have another class in 20, but I'd like to take you out to dinner, maybe tonight. Since we're in the same class, we should get to know each other." "No dinner, sorry. I have a steady man, and he wouldn't like it." I had to try. "Well, see you around, I hope." "Me too, I like you. At least we'll see each other in class." We did see each other in class, twice a week. It was a tough class, and I had to work hard at it. One day I asked her a question about a problem, and she explained it to me. After class, I asked her if she had trouble with the course. "No, I'm good at math. How about you?" "I need to take it for my chem major, but I'm spending a lot of time on it. Maybe you could give me some pointers." Is this a come on? I told you I had a guy. "No, I respect that. I just need a hand. We can sit in the snack bar and go over the stuff like you were my tutor. Okay, snack bar at 4 o'clock? Done. I got to know Lee a lot better through the snack bar meetings. She and I hit it off. We would talk about a lot of other things, not just math. One day, a big guy walked in and up to our table, where we had the books spread out. Lee looked up at him and smiled her killer smile. "Marty, this is my boyfriend, Rashad." "Rashad, this is Marty from my math class." I stood and we shook hands. Rashad was a medium-complected black man, maybe 6'2", 220 pounds. He sat down next to Lee. We closed our math books and Rashad wanted to know why I was taking the course, with Lee and all the nerds. I need an upper-level math course for my chem major. It also helps with my programming. Then the three of us started talking about why certain courses that didn't seem to align with our majors were required. It was an interesting chat. Rashad was smart. I asked him about his major. "I'm studying phys ed. I play hockey, but I want to teach high school unless I can make some money playing hockey. Maybe become a gym teacher." That's a solid plan. I'm not quite sure where I'm headed yet. Chem majors and programmers both find jobs. I just haven't figured out which path to take, you know? What about you, Lee? I'm aiming for business. I'm majoring in business. I like the idea of making some cash. As the semester went on, I spent more time with Lee. I lived in an off-campus apartment, and one day I invited her and Rashad over for a meal. I also invited my neighbor, Stephanie, who was a senior and quite attractive. She and I had a casual relationship. The dinner went smoothly. I made fish stew, spinach salad, and we had cookies and ice cream for dessert. The ladies had wine while Shad and I had beer. Lee and Rashad left around midnight after a game of bridge. Surprisingly, we all enjoyed the game, even though we hadn't played together before. Rashad and Stephanie teamed up, while Lee and I formed the other team. Lee used some unique bidding strategies, which I picked up on, and we ended up winning. Stephanie stayed the night. We had a physical connection, but we both understood that we were just friends with benefits. She had a guy back home, and we never discussed how he would feel about us. That evening was significant because Lee invited me to play in a duplicate bridge tournament at the Army base. I accepted. Meanwhile, Stephanie had Rashad's number. She must have gotten it during the dinner, but it wasn't obvious. I saw them together about 2 days later. They were walking across campus toward our building. I followed at a discreet distance. They went inside, and I followed them into the building. They got into the elevator, and it stopped on the 4th floor where she lived. What should I do now? The bridge tournament was coming up on Friday, just 2 days away. I headed back to my place and relaxed by the window, reading and keeping watch. About 2 hours later, Rashad left through the front door. I hurried over to Stephanie's door, knocked, and she took a while to answer. She seemed flushed, wearing flip-flops and a loose dress. "Hey, Steph, need some company?" "Not right now, Marty." "Oh, damn, Marty. You saw. The way you showed up here." "You saw." "Yep. Did you have a good time? Seems like Shad was a bit sneaky." "I should feel bad about it. But I don't. I feel great. Sorry. No worries. I'm trying to figure out how to handle the situation. I hope you don't mess things up between Lee and Rashad. He's just a distraction for me, like you. Well, not even as much as you." "If you were in Lee's shoes, would you want to know about Shad's slip-up?" "Yeah. Me too." The bridge tournament was a blast. The Army folks were skilled at cards, but Lee and I came in 3rd out of 20 on our side. Not bad. She mentioned something about getting points. As we walked back to my car, she brought up, "Why didn't you tell me about Shad and Steph?" "I wasn't sure. How did you find out?" "Steph told Rashad that you knew. Then he brought it up." "Sorry. My curiosity got the better of me, so..." "What happened in your talk?" "We decided to take a break for a few weeks. See how we feel." "Oh, got it. Marty, I want you to take me to your place, if you want to." "Oh, definitely." I drove, maybe not as carefully as usual, back to the building. Lee was distracting me. She stepped back, grabbed me, and pulled me into the bedroom. "Oh God, Marty." "Oh my God." I believed her. I always thought we'd be a good fit. 20 minutes we lay there, gently caressing each other. I got up and brushed my teeth. Lee came in as I was finishing. I gave her a spare toothbrush. After we'd gotten rid of morning breath, we got rid of my morning woody. During breakfast, Lee asked, "Was I as good as Stephanie? Was I as good as Shad?" We locked eyes, then she grinned. "He's bigger, but you're better." "Steph's pretty good, but you're amazing." From then on, we were inseparable. Lee basically moved in with me. Rashad wasn't thrilled, but he didn't have much to say. It didn't take him long to find another girlfriend. He still visited Stephanie from time to time. Senior year was when Big L moved into the building. He lived on the 4th floor, too. I occasionally saw him with Stephanie. They weren't living together, but they often hung out together. We exchanged greetings until one day Steph invited us up for dessert. Big L was there. It was a pleasant evening. I found Big L polite, smart, and maybe a bit too attentive to Lee. Steph might have felt the same way, as we were never invited back. Lee and I tied the knot at 20, right after graduation. I landed a job with the government at the Pentagon as a programmer. Lee found work with a public relations firm, mainly handling ads for companies aiming to influence government figures like senators, congressmen, and agency personnel. I inherited a house near my workplace from my grandfather. It was a rental, and the lease was up. We moved in. It had 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a renovated garage, and a finished basement. It needed some work, which I tackled with the help of a friend from high school who ran a construction business in Virginia. Lee became pregnant, and we welcomed twin daughters when we were 22, Betsy and Linda. They weren't identical twins, but they sure kept us on our toes. Lee took a year off, and I reduced my workload to give the twins the attention they needed. After that year, I shifted to contractor status, allowing me to work from home, while Lee gradually returned to part-time work. By the time the girls turned 4, she was back to full-time hours. I had a solid routine with the girls by then, and my contracting work was going strong, although I didn't get benefits. Lee's job was becoming more demanding, largely because she pushed herself hard and was ambitious. My work relied more on creativity. Some projects were for the government, while others were personal ventures. I had a couple of new ideas for systems that I thought could be profitable, but I held off on pursuing them immediately. Lee was earning a good income, and the girls were growing up, entering junior high at 13. At 35, I was keeping fit with running and table tennis. Trust me, it's tougher than it sounds against skilled opponents. Before seeing Lee in the video with Big L, I would have said our bed life was satisfying. For me, it was. But after 15 years together, perhaps Lee felt differently. I looked up where Big L lived, just 3 miles away. I wondered if what happened in Miami was a one-time thing or ongoing. I also had some other questions in mind. The next day, I had the girls and myself do DNA swabs. It was a Friday, and despite informing them about the YouTube video, they had to go to school for quizzes and band practice. Lee called at 10 o'clock. I let it go to voicemail. "Marty, please pick up. I love you. I made a mistake. I'll be back this afternoon. Oh crap, sobs. One of the improvements I made to the house was an electronic entry system. I changed the code and set up the converted garage, furnishing it with the Lee's belongings. Both my mother and Lee's mother called, both curious about my next move. I honestly wasn't sure, and I told them as much. I checked Lee's Gmail account, scrolling through her emails from the past month, including those in the trash. No contact with Big L. There were work-related emails and a few slightly suggestive ones from a co-worker who was also headed to Miami. Lee's flight was due at noon. I ignored all her calls. Instead, I had a friend go to the airport to keep an eye on things. He saw Lee and her co-workers disembark. She glanced around, then went to collect her luggage. A few minutes later, Big L emerged from the plane. He spotted Lee, joined her by the baggage claim, but she seemed to decline his advances. They ended up sharing a cab, and my friend captured it all on video. After receiving the footage, I watched as Lee arrived home alone, unable to enter with her changed code. I confronted her at the door, where she tearfully apologized, claiming she didn't know how it all happened. "You don't live here anymore, Lee. Your stuff is in the garage until you find a new place. Maybe you should go to L's house," I told her. "I have nothing with him. I love you," she pleaded. "You've publicly humiliated me, made a mockery of our marriage. The girls are at school, and who knows what they're going through. You're despicable. Get out of my sight." She left in tears, sitting outside on a lawn chair. Our neighbor, Mrs. Cunningham, went over to comfort her. I called Lee's mother, informing her that Lee was nearby and might need support. Ellen, her mom, wasn't exactly sympathetic, but agreed to come over in an hour. I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee, trying to figure out what to do next. My thoughts were still a jumble from the night before. I reached out to a lawyer I knew, who referred me to Joan Ellis, a family law attorney. I scheduled an appointment with her for the following Monday. Surprisingly, Miss Ellis called me back within half an hour. "Mr. Martin, this is Joan Ellis. You have an appointment for Monday regarding your wife and the basketball player," she asked. "Yeah, that's right. How did you know?" "The video didn't mention her name," I replied. "A TV reporter figured it out. Big L's a big deal around here, especially in gossip circles. I thought we shouldn't wait until Monday. Can you come in tomorrow morning at 10? She suggested. Sure, 10 works for me, I agreed. Great. Please jot down a brief history of your relationship with your wife and with Mr. Johnson, if possible. Also, gather any financial documents you have, she instructed. We wrapped up the call with her advising me to avoid impulsive actions. As I hung up, the phone rang again. It was Big L. Marty, I'm calling to apologize, he said. Screw you. I'm going to make your life hell as much as I can. Jerk, I retorted. Whoa, it wasn't all me. It was just as much her. It just happened, he defended. I was happily married to her before Miami. We have 2 kids. You jerk. If you see me coming, run, I said, calmly but firmly. There was a long pause before he hung up, but now I had his number. I checked our joint cell phone bill for Lee's calls and found Elle's number, but only after she had arrived in Miami, and then twice. I couldn't see today's calls, but I figured their meeting in Miami wasn't planned. I looked at the Wiz schedule and saw they had a game in Miami on Wednesday, where Big L was working as the color man. So, he was there for business. The doorbell rang. It was my parents and in-laws, but no Lee. I welcomed them in, offering drinks, which they declined. We all sat down, and I stood at the entrance to the living room. So what's on your mind? I asked. My mom, Lacey, spoke up. We talked outside and thought we'd see where your head's at. I'm thinking, I started, my voice catching. I composed myself, exchanging a glance with my mom, who seemed to understand my pain. Later, she mentioned that my expression was so devastated that she couldn't see how things could be repaired. My dad asked, Is there any chance you'd talk to Lee? She asked when we were at her place. Why? There's nothing she could say. She wrecked our family not just for one night, but for 3. She didn't even bother hiding it from her coworkers. Now the whole world knows, I replied bitterly. Ellen interjected. I know she messed up, Marty. Big time. But you have your daughters, and you've loved each other for years. There's a lot worth saving if you can. She's not my wife anymore. I'll never see her that way again. She's just the mother of my kids. That's it, I stated firmly. Listen, you're hurting right now. Your pride's taken a hit. But your marriage isn't over just because of a few days, Ellen urged. Ellen, I respect and love you guys. But your daughter, she's done something unforgivable. Please, don't try to fix this anymore. It's over, I concluded. She raised her hands. You all should start thinking about what life will be like after the divorce, or when the separation is official, I continued. My mom, with tears in her eyes, said, Just give it a few days, Marty. Just a little time. Your dad and I can take the kids for the weekend. We'll go to the lake. I agreed, and right then the girls arrived home on the bus. They rushed to the door, but found the code changed, so they had to knock. Seeing their grandparents there surprised them. They wanted to tell me about their day at school. Betsy had a friend, Sharon Davis, who asked her about the video. Betsy said she hadn't seen it but knew about it. Sharon wondered if her parents were going to split up. Betsy and Linda weren't sure. I knew the truth. I told them we'd figure it out later. They didn't seem too upset. Linda asked where her mom was. Ellen replied, She's next door. Your grandparents wanted to talk to your dad. But I think you girls should pack for the weekend because you're staying with us. We'll go to the lake. They were thrilled, but they wanted to see Lee. We sent them upstairs to pack. I didn't think they should go see her, but the others thought it was necessary. I suggested Lee could see them outside on the porch. Once they were packed, Ellen went to get Lee. Their bags were loaded into the car, and they waited on the porch with the grandparents. Lee came over with Ellen. The girls didn't rush to her. They waited. I had the window open in the upstairs bedroom, so I could see and hear everything. Lee knelt in front of the girls, and the 3 hugged. Mom, Linda asked, what did you do? How could you have closeness with that guy? This last was sobbed out. I just made a very bad mistake. I have to try to figure out why. But I still love you girls and your dad very much. Betsy was not impressed with this. She was the harder of the 2 of them. If you loved Dad, you couldn't do that. You put it all out there on video. How could you do that? She was sobbing now. Lee was crying. I'm so sorry, it was a bad mistake. Lee hugged Linda, but Betsy pushed away. Lee got up and ran to her dad's car. My parents got the girls into their van. All of them drove off in different directions. I just sat on my bed, stunned and saddened. Then I got very, very angry. I was aboil with anger. At Lee, at Larry. I paced. I screamed. I went downstairs to the basement and started punching a bag I had down there. I made up my mind that both of them had to face consequences, no matter what else. After that, I did my best to heal the damage to my hands. Then I had a nightcap and went to bed. It took a while for me to finally fall asleep. The next morning, I went for a long, fast run. Then, I gathered my financial documents and headed to the lawyer's office. Joan Ellis, a woman around 45 with dark hair and eyes, greeted me. She was casually dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. We shook hands. "I'm sorry I'm not dressed up. It's Saturday and I was doing some yard work," she apologized. "No worries, you look fine," I assured her with a smile. "Let's head into the conference room," she suggested, leading the way. I began, "Miss Ellis, I want to understand my options regarding divorcing my wife." "I can walk you through that, but are you absolutely sure you want a divorce?" "It's a tough journey. Do you have children?" she inquired. "Yes, twins, 13. I want custody," I confirmed. "Before we get into that, let's revisit if ending your marriage is the only solution. Was the incident in Miami a one-time thing, or has it happened before?" she probed. "I don't think she's cheated before. I'm not certain," I responded. "If that's the case, could you possibly forgive her?" she asked. "No," I replied swiftly without elaborating. "All right, let's talk about finances," she suggested. We went over our incomes, contributions to the children's upbringing, and assets. Joan was glad to hear that I owned the house before the marriage and that the kids had always lived there. She also believed that my role as the primary caregiver would work in my favor for custody. However, she reminded me that nothing was guaranteed. I made around the same as Lee, but my income wasn't as consistent. Joan believed that neither of us would have to pay alimony. The parent who doesn't have custody would be responsible for child support. I wondered how soon we could start the divorce process. "Maybe a week to prepare and file the documents. But I think you should wait a bit longer. People can change their minds. Plus, you'll likely need counseling," Joan advised. "Oh, can we skip that? I really don't want to talk to her alone," I responded. "You'll have to have those conversations. We'll try to keep them brief." "Why are your hands bandaged?" she asked. "I got pretty angry last night and took it out on the punching bag without gloves," I explained. "Well, at least you didn't confront Mr. Johnson or your wife," she remarked. "Speaking of that, can I sue him for this?" "He needs to face consequences," I insisted. "In this state, there's no way to sue for adultery or alienation of affection anymore. I checked the Florida law too, and there's no option there either," she explained. "He still has to pay," I said firmly, my voice flat. "I'll see what I can do, but please, no violence," she urged. "I can't promise that. He needs to face the consequences. I won't be able to live with it if he gets away with this," I replied. "Mr. Martin, I have to inform you that if I had knowledge of you planning a violent act, I might have to report it," she warned. "Joan, you'll never have that knowledge. Thanks for telling me," I assured her. I signed an agreement with her and paid a retainer. I asked her to prepare the papers as soon as possible. I got home around noon. My dad, Leland, called as I walked in. "Hi, how are you doing today?" he asked. "Okay, I just came from the lawyer," I replied. "Oh, that was quick. What did they say?" he inquired. "She and I discussed what would be involved in the divorce." "Marty, hold off on that. Take your time. This is a huge decision, and you shouldn't rush it," my dad advised. "Dad, the moment Lee cheated with that guy, she was done. And she did it repeatedly. Makes it even worse." "But once is enough," I countered. "Your mom believes that she hurt you so much that there's no turning back. Maybe she's right, but I still want you to take it slow. At least give Lee a chance to explain," he urged. "What could she possibly say to change my mind?" I questioned. There was silence for a while. Then, "Okay, I can't think of anything," he admitted. "That settles it," I concluded. We talked about how the girls were feeling. Linda was deeply sad, while Betsy was furious and struggling to control her anger. Mom was trying to comfort them, reassuring them that they wouldn't lose a parent and would always have both of us. We said goodbye. The landline rang. Without caller ID, I let it go to voicemail. It was Lee. "Marty, if you're there, please pick up. I need to talk to you. Marty, I need that. I messed up. I know it. You're the only person I could turn to about something like this. And now I've lost you? Please. I understand how angry and embarrassed you must be. I'm sorry," she sobbed before hanging up. Tears streaming down my face, I returned to the basement. This time I wore gloves. It still hurt. I punched and kicked the bag until I could hardly stand. Afterward, I went upstairs and took a shower. Some guys turn to alcohol in situations like this. I prefer the bag or going for a run. I contemplated ways to get back at Larry. One idea kept popping into my head. I found a tool, Although I already owned two registered, a .45 and a .40 S&W, one day while jogging, I spotted a glimmer in the tall grass. It turned out to be a Taurus .380. I brought it home, cleaned it up, and found it loaded and functional, but I noticed the serial number had been filed off, making it illegal. Despite this, I decided to keep it. I took it to the shooting range once, and it shot fairly accurately. The thought of using the Taurus on Larry crossed my mind often. However, with the girls to care for, I couldn't risk ending up behind bars. Still, that guy was infuriating. I pushed aside those thoughts. It didn't feel like the right time to talk to Lee. I knew we'd have to confront each other eventually, but just thinking about seeing her made me sick to my stomach. Alone in the house, a wave of despair washed over me. It felt like a heavy weight pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, fear gripped me, and I jumped off the couch. If anyone had seen me then, they might have thought I'd lost my mind. I knew I had to do something, so I went for a brisk walk. It led me past Larry's house. I didn't linger, but I noticed the lack of security around his place. A large, modern house close to the street, with a basketball hoop in the driveway, and a sizable garage in the back. I walked by it a couple of times, snapping some photos with my phone. I walked past Lee's parents' house up north. Their cars were parked outside while Lee's remained in our garage. I kept going. At a convenience store, I grabbed a prepaid cell phone and a Diet Pepsi, then headed back home. It was around 3 on a Saturday afternoon. Once inside, I made a sandwich but only managed to take a few bites before feeling overwhelmed by anguish. I grabbed the .380 and drove out to the countryside where a friend had some land with an outdoor range. No one was around, so I went through 2 boxes of ammo with the pistol. It wasn't fancy, but got the job done, though a bit heavier than ideal. On my way back, I stopped at a drugstore for 2 neoprene wraps for my thigh. Back home, I fashioned a wrap to carry the .380 on my back and tested it out while running. It worked well. My cell phone had been off all day, and I hadn't checked emails. When I powered it on, I found 11 voicemails, 20 or so texts from family, friends, and coworkers, plus a bunch of emails. The messages all echoed the same plea from Lee, Ellen, and my mom. They wanted to talk. The texts were similar, including a couple from Lee's dad, Milt. One was an apology for Lee's actions and his perceived failure as a father, while the other suggested we talk away from the women. I called him back, and we agreed to meet at Raymond Park by the basketball court in 30 minutes. I slipped into some jeans and tucked the .380 in my pocket, just in case I ran into Larry, who lived about half a mile from the park. I cruised around for 10 minutes, passing by Larry's house. I got to the park early, and so did Milt. It's not a huge park, and it wasn't crowded. We shook hands and found a bench away from the basketball court. Milt spoke first. "I wanted to make sure you were doing all right. Ellen and your mom seemed pretty worried." "I'm not doing all right, Milt. I feel worse than ever." "Well, when my mom passed, it took me a year to start feeling somewhat normal again. I just took it one day at a time. That's all you can do. Easy to say, hard as hell to do. And it's only been a day." "If it helps, Lee is almost shut down. She hasn't eaten since she got to our place, and she's hardly said a word. We're thinking about getting her some help. You, on the other hand, look a lot better than she does. Maybe it's the guilt. She's got it. And you don't." "That's tough to hear, Milt. The twins will need her, need a mom. I just don't get why she's so torn up. I mean, she did what she did, out in the open. Did she think no one would find out? I can't believe that. Sooner or later, even without the YouTube, someone from her work, some of them are my friends, they would have spilled the beans. I don't think she was thinking straight at all. Maybe she was suddenly in a strange situation, away from family with a famous guy chasing her. She might have just given in to feelings she normally would have ignored. That's my take on it, at least." "You're being reasonable, Milt. But I think she's had a thing for Larry since school, and she thought she could have it all. What's your plan?" "I'm probably going to divorce her. Right now I can't even think about her without feeling angry and resentful. I hope it doesn't make me sick." "Well, everyone else said to take your time with decisions, but I can't see how you could go back to any sort of family life with her." "Exactly. It's a lost cause. I'll wait a bit, but not too long. You might want to prepare her, if she's really as bad off as you say." "I'll do my best." We said goodbye. As I walked back to my car, parked nearby on the street, I spotted Larry dribbling a basketball up the intersecting street toward the court. I started to reach for the pistol. Milt saw him too. He was driving toward Larry and leaned on the horn. Larry was startled and lost the ball in the street. He foolishly jumped after it without looking. It wasn't Milt who hit him. A car coming from the other direction, maybe going a bit fast, was blocked by Milt's car. The other car, an SUV of some sort, struck him before the driver could even brake. Larry was thrown across the hood and windshield, up into the air, and then down onto the street. Milt kept driving. I rushed over to Larry. He was still alive and conscious for the moment. I looked at him. The SUV driver hurried over, shouting that he had called 911. Luckily, we weren't far from the hospital, just about 4 blocks away. Larry recognized me. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. I watched as he slowly faded away. The paramedics arrived in about 2 minutes. They worked hard, but unfortunately, they couldn't save Big L. I felt a strange mix of emotions. The police showed up. I was a bit nervous because despite having a concealed carry permit, the .380 wasn't legal. But I gave them an interview, providing my name and address without any repercussions. The SUV driver, an older man, was distraught. I reassured him and the police that there was nothing he could have done differently. Larry had just gone for the loose ball at the wrong moment. After about an hour, I drove home. I got rid of the .380, then headed over to Milt's house. I knew Lee was there, but I needed to discuss the fatal traffic incident with Milt. I parked outside and rang the bell. Ellen answered. She could tell I was in an emotional state, and I was indeed, but with a feeling of euphoria. Well, at least relief. I knew I had probably avoided a murder charge. It was pure luck. But I had to speak with Milt. I talked to Ellen, asking, "Is Milt around? I need to talk to him about something." She turned and shouted, "Milt, don't you want to see Lee?" "No, not yet. Milt." Milt came downstairs, and I motioned for him to step outside so we could chat. "Milt, Big L has passed." "Heck, you ended him? I saw you had a .380. Man, Marty!" But he didn't really seem too shocked, if you ask me. "I didn't end him. He got hit by a car after you honked at him. He dropped his basketball and ran into the street after it like a kid. I watched him die." I couldn't help but smirk. I get it now. An accident, God works in mysterious ways. I'm leaving it to you or Ellen to break the news to Lee about her boyfriend. He wasn't her boyfriend, but we'll inform her. I'm guessing it'll be all over the news. Definitely. How's she holding up? Not great. And you, on the other hand, seem oddly relieved. I actually felt cheated when he passed, but then I saw it as a sort of relief. Marty, I want to save my daughter. I think she's heading down a bad path. I know she messed up, but I love her and want her to have a chance at life. So I'm asking you if you can to at least not get in the way. Maybe later, lend a hand. It's a tough request, but I'm asking. Milt, I need some time to think about that. If she and I talk too soon, I won't be any help. You need to keep her away. I'll mull it over. I'll try to figure something out. And thanks for the congrats on dodging a murder charge. We chuckled at that. We returned to the house and I drove off. I slept through the night. The girls called and we had a good chat. Then I drifted off to sleep. Sunday brought me back to feeling low. It was a nice day, but I found myself just thinking about my marriage. Despite what Milt said, I knew Lee and I could never reconcile. It was a sad realization, but it was the truth. I went for another long run, then showered and headed to my parents' place for a Sunday barbecue, bringing along some brats. The twins seemed to be in better spirits after a video call with Lee, who seemed to have perked up, managing to lift their mood. I found that curious. My mom mentioned that there was no mention of Big L, Lee's affair, or Larry's death during their chat, just talk about school. Lee assured the girls she would see them once she was feeling better. I enjoyed spending time with my family and the girls. While they were swimming, I mentioned to my parents that I had witnessed Big L's accident and death. They were taken aback. My dad asked, "You didn't have anything, No, just a coincidence. I was at the park with Milt chatting. He drove off and then Larry got hit chasing his ball into the street." "All right. Well, I can't say I'm sorry. May the Lord have mercy on his soul." We changed the topic. On Monday, I received a call from Joan Ellis. First, she inquired about my feelings regarding Larry's death. She didn't know I was present at the scene. My name hadn't been mentioned. I recounted the incident, and she seemed surprised, maybe a tad suspicious. I would probably feel the same in her shoes. Then she informed me that the paperwork would be ready by Wednesday and asked when I wanted it to be served. I requested her to hold off for a bit because Lee was in a fragile state. I had made a promise of sorts to Milt. The children decided to go to school despite the news about Big L's death and his actions the week before making headlines. I was by myself, so I decided to get some work done. I spent half the day on army tasks and a couple of hours on my own projects. After their extra activities at school, I picked up the girls and we had pizza for dinner. It's something they enjoy, so I thought it would be nice. We had a pleasant evening, but at bedtime, they both asked if their mom would come back. I answered honestly. I don't think things will be the same as they were before. I can't predict the future, but I don't see us going back to how things were. There will be changes, but know that both of us will always love you too. On Tuesday, Milt called and Ellen joined the call. They suggested meeting up, so I agreed to meet them at Starbucks. When we got our drinks, Milt mentioned that he had spoken to a psychologist who specializes in family counseling. He suggested that Lee and I participate. Ellen added that if we proceeded with divorce due to adultery, counseling would likely be ordered by the court anyway. Okay, I said. But I'm not sure counseling will help her if we really dig into things. I won't sugarcoat. We're not asking you to lie, just approach it gently. Listen to the therapist. Talk to Lee. Otherwise, she could be in serious trouble. Big L's accident seemed to scare her. We haven't told her you were there. The first session was scheduled for the following Monday at 10 a.m. I arrived promptly, not wanting to spend extra time with Lee. The counselor, Dr. Sylvia Price, explained her practice, which included dealing with cases of marital infidelity. She asked me about my goals for the counseling sessions. I want to move on with my life. My main priority is being a good father to my kids. I don't think getting back together with Lee is possible. What about you, Lee? What are your goals? I want things to go back to how they were before, but I understand that might not happen. I still want to be married to Marty, even if things have to change. Dr. Price looked at both of us. From what I understand, Lee went to Miami for a work conference where she met a man from her university and spent several nights with him. Their relationship became public because the man was well known. Is that why we're here? Yes, Lee admitted. I didn't expect our relationship in Miami to become public. I thought it would stay between us while I was away from my family. Dr. Price questioned, if that's the case, why did you go dancing with Mr. Johnson? You knew he was a famous person. I thought it would be enjoyable. It was away from the hotel and turned out to be fun, Lee explained. But you must have realized that your coworkers would find out about your relationship. And it wouldn't be long before Marty found out. Let's put that aside for now, Dr. Price suggested. Okay, Lee agreed. Marty, can you explain why you're certain the marriage is over? I looked at Lee directly. Because she was the person I trusted and loved the most. Seeing her betray me so openly and easily devastated me. I've experienced loss before, like when my grandparents passed in a crash. But this is different. I can't put myself in a position to be hurt like that again. If Lee could do that, anyone could. I can't give her, or anyone, that power over me again. Lee cried openly as I spoke. I made it clear that I could never trust her again. How do you feel seeing her like this? Dr. Price inquired. Just sad and really angry. It was incredibly cruel to me and our children. Even if it wasn't intentional, it was still terrible. All for 3 nights with some guy from your past? I directed my question straight at Lee. Lee sobbed, No, I don't know why I did it. Take it easy, Lee, Dr. Price intervened. Is it true that you had feelings for Mr. Johnson back in school? Yes. He was attractive, famous, and he showed interest in me. But I turned him down because I was with Marty, Lee admitted. So why did you agree in Miami? I questioned. I was feeling unsatisfied leading up to the trip. We were all so busy. Miami seemed like a chance to break away. But when I saw Larry, I knew I wouldn't resist him. It happened so fast, I can't explain it, Lee confessed. We had a great night before you left, right? Or were you faking it? I challenged. No, that was real. I was still feeling it on the flight. I messed up, Lee confessed, crying again. I felt tears welling up, but my anger resurfaced. I needed to step out before I exploded. Dr. Price followed me and suggested I take a moment in the restroom while she spoke to Lee alone. After about 15 minutes, Lee emerged, no longer crying. I'm sorry, Marty, she said before leaving. Dr. Price turned to me. How do you feel about Mr. Johnson's death? I was there when he passed. I felt relieved he was gone. I might have killed him myself if he hadn't been hit first. I know it sounds messed up, but it's how I feel, I admitted. And now? The same, maybe less. That guy ruined my entire life for a closeness. I felt cheated that I couldn't off him. Why does Lee's affair with Larry feel like it's destroying your entire life? Dr. Price questioned. I was committed to my family. Now that's all changed. Lee's betrayal shattered my trust. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust anyone again, I confessed. But it's only been a short time. Have you thought about how passionate Lee and Larry's encounters were? Yeah, I saw the video. They were consumed by desire, I replied. And how did that make you feel? Betrayed. It was the ultimate betrayal. Lee, no matter what happens, she'll always have memories of that affair. If we stayed married, I'd always wonder if she was thinking of him when we were together. I want to ruin that memory for her. It's the least I can do, I admitted. That's a tough stance. You used to deeply love this woman, Dr. Price observed. Used to. I loved her deeply, which is why this hurts so much. She tore me apart, I concluded. With that, the session ended. Dr. Price suggested I think about what living arrangements could be arranged if we decided to split.
Lee's side of the story. My task is to outline what happened in Miami and why I made the choices I did. Additionally, I'll explore the possibility of reconciling with Marty. Before the Miami trip, I felt aimless, lacking joy in things I once enjoyed. Work and family life felt routine, and this had been the case for months. I sensed a general feeling of boredom. I was anticipating the Miami trip. A coworker named Brady Bean had been expressing interest in me since he joined the office. Despite my attempts to brush him off, he persisted. While he wasn't particularly attractive, he had a friendly demeanor that was somewhat appealing. His persistence was flattering, even though I wasn't interested. When we found out we'd both be in Miami, he began suggesting it as an opportunity for us to be intimate without consequences. I made it clear I wasn't interested, but I knew he wouldn't give up easily. However, Larry was at our hotel when we arrived, and he was undeniably attractive. His enthusiasm immediately captivated me, and I felt drawn to him. He made it clear he wanted me, and I agreed to have dinner with him. I can't fully explain why I acted so impulsively. Marty and I had shared passionate intimacy the night before, and I was still feeling the excitement. Larry's presence felt like a temporary escape from reality, a chance for some excitement away from home. I never considered the consequences of cheating on Marty, at least not consciously. If I had met Larry in Virginia, I likely would have declined his advances. However, I convinced myself that being in a different place for a few days somehow made it okay. Larry and I both knew at dinner that we were going straight back to his room. We skipped dessert. As soon as we got the door closed, Larry pulled me into a kiss, and we were off to the races. We both just stripped off. I was thinking of absolutely nothing but his beautiful body and Big Johnson. I peeked fast around his big tool. That's how it went. The next morning, I missed breakfast with everyone else and barely made it to the meeting. I felt marked by the previous night's intimacy, sure that they all noticed. While I got some suspicious glances, no one said anything directly. I briefly considered the possibility of someone informing Marty, but I dismissed it. They were clueless, just making assumptions. The intimacy with Larry was unlike anything I had experienced before. I think it was a mix of being away from home without the usual responsibilities and his strong, attractive physique with a large member. Plus, he desired me as much as I desired him. Despite having many options, he chose to be with me. My desire for him was overwhelming. After the meetings, I reached out to him, and we spent 2 hours in his room, followed by room service and more intimacy. He introduced me to something new, a whole closeness, something Marty and I had never considered, but Larry wanted it, and so it happened. The following morning, I still felt the weight of their sideways glances, a bit concerned. However, I met Larry in his room at 5 o'clock, and we spent the next few hours together in bed. While the intimacy was still incredible, it didn't quite match the intensity of the previous nights. We had room service, and then he suggested we dress up and go dancing. That's exactly what we did, and that's how we ended up on YouTube. I recently watched the YouTube clip of us. I knew Marty had seen it too, likely on the same night. I understood what he saw. His wife openly and shamelessly lusting after another man in public. After our dance, we returned to the hotel and continued being intimate. I had an early flight the next morning. When I woke up, we had closeness, had a shower together, and got dressed. We had breakfast in his room. Then I went back to my room to pack. My roommate, Cindy, informed me that a video of us dancing was on YouTube, and she described it as scandalous. A sense of dread overwhelmed me. I knew I was in trouble. While we were boarding the bus to the airport, I spotted Bart Kovacs, Marty's close friend. I asked him if Marty had tried to reach me. I hadn't checked my phone during the trip, and Marty left voicemails each night. Bart informed me that Marty had seen the YouTube video of our dance and knew I had spent every night with Larry. I felt numb. The flight home was miserable. No one spoke to me, and I sat by the window next to a stranger. I was aware that Larry was on the flight, but I didn't see him. Upon landing, I still didn't see Larry. I retrieved my luggage and he approached me, expressing concern about my well-being. I told him I doubted I would ever be okay again, which seemed to sadden him. It didn't occur to me that Marty would pick me up, so I waited in the cab line. When I finally got a cab, Larry ended up in the same one as me since we were headed to nearby locations. During the cab ride, Larry apologized for the YouTube incident, admitting he hadn't thought it through. I told him I wasn't in the mood to talk much. I instructed the cab to drop Larry off first. When I arrived home, I couldn't bring myself to enter the house. Marty opened the door, and his devastated and furious expression made me flee. Since then, I've been staying with my parents. I've been feeling incredibly numb. I attempted to talk to the girls, but Betsy pushed me away, and I can't blame her. We managed to connect on a telecall, which was a bit better. It took me an hour just to prepare for it. Now I'm going through counseling. After the initial session, I came to believe that my marriage was done. Marty's explanation of his emotions really hit me hard. I don't see how I can navigate past his anger and sorrow now, nor do I see how I can ever earn back his trust. I don't think I deserve it. Then there's Larry. He's gone, passed in a car accident. When my mom broke the news to me, I felt a profound sense of sorrow. He had asked me to call him while we were in the cab. Honestly, I might have called him, but now he's gone. His death leaves me feeling another kind of emptiness. If I ever have closeness with another man, I know I'll likely be haunted by memories of my time with Larry. However, now with him gone, perhaps not. It's a strange feeling. I can't shake the sense that if I had resisted him, he might still be alive. It doesn't make sense, but it's there. I feel so messed up.
Marty has something to add. Things are starting to settle down at home. The twins are managing school, although it's been tough. Betsy is still upset and Linda misses her mom. I think Betsy does too. They have a teleconference every night. Lee seems to be doing a bit better, but it's hard to tell during the short calls. Our second counseling session was much like the first, except we each had an individual session before the joint one. Dr. Price asked, "Have you considered what might lead to reconciliation between you two?" I couldn't think of anything, sorry. Do you think if you understood why Lee was unfaithful with Larry, you could work on trusting her again? If you knew the reasons behind it and how to prevent it from happening again? That sounds unrealistic, sorry. I think she just wanted to have closeness with him and thought she could get away with it. Isn't that what she admitted? I believed her about being attracted to Larry, but I think she wanted to be caught. Why? That's an important question. Maybe you should ask her. Doc, this isn't going to result in us getting back together. Betrayal like this is hard to overcome. Betrayal because she thought she could get away with it is even harder. What if she wanted to get caught somehow? That might be even worse. It would mean she wanted out of the family, away from me, from her life. She wanted drama. You know, if Larry were still alive, I believe she'd be with him now. Our joint session started and ended with her apologizing, but I wasn't convinced. Even if she genuinely regretted her actions and could explain them, I couldn't stay with her. I had the lawyer serve the divorce papers.
Lee again. Today I received the divorce papers. I'm still writing in this journal, hoping it might give me some clarity in the future. During our counseling session this week, I noticed that Marty was less angry. He seemed more composed. That signaled to me that our relationship was over. I've read about the stages of grief, and it seems Marty has reached acceptance regarding our divorce and how my affair ended our marriage. The papers didn't come as a surprise. Now, I have to consult a lawyer. Returning to work last week wasn't easy. I felt the cold reception from my colleagues. They all knew about my infidelity and the mess it made of my family life. Even Brady Bean, who used to pursue me, kept his distance. Too bad for him. He might have had a chance now. I bet he'll try again soon, now that he knows I'm 403. The lawyer advised me to seek joint custody of the girls. Since Marty owned the house before we got married and has been the primary caregiver for years, he'll likely stay there. So, I might get the girls on alternate weeks or weekends if I live nearby. It's all pretty disheartening. I confessed my infidelity to the lawyer and asked him to expedite the divorce process. I don't want any financial support from Marty, and it seems he doesn't want any from me either. Our savings will be divided equally. It's sad to see all those years of marriage go down the drain, leaving me with just memories. I realized I didn't feel sorry for Larry. Yes, I'm equally to blame, but he didn't have to get involved with me. He could have chosen anyone. Why me? I'll never understand. Dr. Price suggested that my behavior, especially my open flirtation and lack of effort to conceal the affair, might indicate a desire for a more exciting life. But I disagree. Marty thinks I wanted to be caught and set free. Well, now I am free, and I hate it. I've lost my appetite, even for closeness. When I feel tense, I use a vibrator instead of going out to bars. I've turned down Brady Bean multiple times, and I don't even feel tempted. It's so easy. Yet I wonder how long this feeling of emptiness will last.
Marty, the divorce was finalized today. I have primary custody of the twins, and they'll keep living in our old house. Lee gets them every other weekend, plus 2 weeks in summer, and either Thanksgiving or Christmas. They might end up with double the gifts at Christmas. Our settlement remains the same as the past 6 months, ever since Lee moved to an apartment 2 miles away. I've told Milt and Ellen they're welcome any time. They visit often and probably see the girls on Lee's weekends. I haven't started dating, but I've had a few casual encounters. Some divorced women from our friend group have shown interest. We go out for dinner or bowling and then back to my place for some fun without the kids. The closeness is usually good, but I've made it clear to all three that I'm not looking for anything serious or exclusive. They know about my past and understand. Some might hope I'll change my mind, but I doubt it. The pain I felt seeing Lee with that guy is still raw, and I try not to dwell on it. The twins are adjusting. Linda is okay with Lee, but Betsy holds a grudge like a pro. She's a lot like me, which might not be a good thing. I've only talked about this with Ellen, not with Lee. Lee and I don't really talk much. She knows I prefer to keep our interactions minimal. Seeing her is painful, so I try to avoid it. Ellen is concerned about Lee, who has become somewhat of a recluse. I don't see her around much, even though we're in the same social circle and live nearby. I don't feel sympathy for her, and probably never will. I never understood why she did what she did. I don't think she understands it either. I guess it was a combination of factors. Her general dissatisfaction, the opportunity to go to Miami and meeting Larry there. Maybe any two of those wouldn't have led to this, but all three together. Bam, marriage over, lost at sea. A year later, Milt Moore was out playing golf on a Saturday, part of his usual foursome. But today, an old friend from school, Fred Cunningham, was filling in for one of the guys. They'd known each other since high school, and Fred worked as an electrical engineer. As they walked from the 9th tee, they had a private chat. They hadn't talked about this matter before, not even over the phone. Milt asked, "How's things going for you these days, Fred?" "I'm managing, I guess." I gave it a shot. Just followed him from his house, like you suggested. He always played on Saturday afternoons if he was around. Even after retiring, he still wanted to play. I read about it in the Post. It was a shock when he ran into the street. I had to make a split-second decision. Came out of nowhere. But I did it. If he hadn't done that, maybe I couldn't have swerved in time. Your honk definitely startled him. But you must have been shaken after. I know I was. It worked perfectly. Even better than expected. Incredible. Almost like someone up there intervened to save Marty. I was definitely shaken. I saw him die. I was dialing 911. Marty. That was Marty? He was right there. Why? I figured he needed to witness it if it went down like that. Closure, you know? But later, he said he felt robbed. I knew would end the guy. Sooner or later, he'd act on it. He had a tool on him at the time. I just wanted my granddaughters to have a dad around, a normal family. And I knew Lee, well, she might have reacted badly if Marty got arrested, especially if it was because of her. But did he really deserve to die? Hard to say. But Marty and the girls deserved a shot at a decent life, and so did Lee. After that, the two old pals never brought up the topic again. They just walked side by side down the fairway.